Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we'll be learning how to cut this off-shoulder jumpsuit. There is elastic at the round shoulder, and also there is elastic at the round sleeve, and also at the waist of the jumpsuit. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please subscribe to this channel and also like and share this video. So guys, let's get into the tutorial. Also, there is no waist seam at the waist of the jumpsuit. Okay, so let's get into the cutting table. I said it's an off-shoulder jumpsuit, so I'll be taking 5 inches off this place. So now the length I'm working with is 55 inches, but because I'm taking off 5 inches, so I have 50 inches length there. I've already added my hemming allowance to the length. So now this is the 5 inches I'm taking upward. So I'm taking 5 inches upward like so. So because it's an off shoulder and I'm taking 5 inches upward, you can take 4 inches away and you can take 5 inches away. So from the 5 inches I took off, okay, I measured my bust point, which is 10 inches, my waistline, which is 15 inches, my hip line, which is 24 inches, and my tie line. So to determine your tie line, you just measure either 2 to 3 inches after your hip line is your tie line. So now you can see that I didn't fold the fabric equal. This one right here is the front. This right here is the front body, is why this is the back. Okay, because the crotch at the back is going to be longer than the front crotch, so that was why I folded it like this. So now the next thing to do, to know the fold, you can just go ahead and do all your measurements to know how much fabric you have to leave around here. I'm using about 1.5 yards of fabric. Like, yes, I wasn't thinking of doing this before, so I just decided to do this. Then I calculated my measurements and I feel it should be enough for me, though I'll be using another material for the sleeve. So now the next thing to do is to determine your crotch extension, because your crotch extension is the line that is going to serve as our center line. Okay, the crotch extension will serve as our center line. So to determine your crotch extension, if you are making a trouser, at times we do use our the quarter of our hip measurement. Then from there you now take your crotch line. But because this is a jumpsuit and you'll still be needing extra allowance at the side here, so that was why I want to determine your crotch extension. You can also do this too if you are making a trouser. You can determine your crotch extension and add the allowance you want to add and add it. So the crotch extension I'm working with is 2.5. All you need to do is divide the quarter of your hip, divide it by 4. Whatever you have there is your crotch extension. So my crotch extension is 2.5. So if you want to add extra inches to this 2.5, you can add it, but I won't be adding it here. I'm supposed to add half an inch to this 2.5 because I'm going to be joining, you know, this side of the trouser. But the allowance, I'm going to transfer it to the back crotch. So I'll just take my 2.5 crotch extension. You are going to take it all through. You measure it all through 2.5. You have to measure it down and upward. I've taken the 2.5 crotch extension. Okay, so now you are going to determine your crotch line. So from the waist, remember this is my waist, so from your waist now you determine your crotch, you know, your crotch line. So my crotch line is 11. Okay, 11. That is how to determine your crotch line. Divide your hip divided by 4 plus 2 inches. Because it's a jumpsuit, you add extra 2 inches to it. But if you don't want it too tight, you can add 1 inches to it. But I'll be adding 2 inches to the quarter of my hip, so making it 11. So this is my 11 here. Okay, normally I'm not supposed to extend my tie line up to this place, so just ignore this tie line here. So So let me take this again. To determine your crotch line, from your waist you take your crotch line. Your crotch line is the quarter of your hip plus 2 inches. The 2 inches is because it's a jumpsuit and you need ease around that crotch area. So I have 11 inches. So I'm taking the 11 inches here. So remember, I've already taken my crotch extension, which is the line that I have here. So now this is my crotch extension. Can you see it here now? So now you're going to curve it. Can you see the way I'm curving it now? So the next thing is to take the horizontal measurement. So now this is my hip line here. So I'm going to take my hip measurement. My quarter of my hip is 9.5 plus 1 inch seam allowance at the side. I have 10.5. Okay, so I'll be adding half an inch to the 10.5 for ease. So I have 11 inches. So this is my 11 inches here. So I'll also be inserting my hip line, my hip measurement to the waist measurement and also to the bust measurement, because I want to put elastic at the waist. So now at my waist measurement too, I will input 11 inches. This is the 11 inches. At my bust measurement too, I will input the 11 inches. So this is the 11 inches. So now coming to this place, we have to create the armhole. So this line here is going to be my elastic casing allowance. So now my shoulder line is 7.5. So because I've taken 5 inches off, so from this 5 inches you take your armhole measurement. Okay, so this is my 5 inches. From there I'm going to take my 7.5 armhole measurement. So I'll just make it 8 inches so that it can be free. So this is my armhole here. This is my armhole line here. You need to take the 5 inches off. Then from the 5 inches, you measure your 7.5. And this is what I have. But because I'm using 8 inches, so I've marked my 8 inches. Now to determine what you are going to input at the chest area here. Remember, this is our center back. So you are taking the measurement from the center, okay? So now the next thing you are going to do now is you can insert your bust measurement. My bust measurement is 8.5. Okay, so I'll be adding half an inch to it. So I have 9.5 here. So this is the 9.5. So I'll be adding half inch there to make it 9 inches. So I'll just measure the 9 inches upward and also downward like this. Can you see? And then you take the curve, you curve it in like so. So now this is my armhole. I've created my armhole. Your armhole might be bigger than mine. Okay, it doesn't matter. So this is it right here that I've done. I only added half an inch to it. You can leave it, the half an inch is just for, you can leave it as it is. You can leave it as your normal bust measurement or add half an inch to it. So I'm done with this part. So at this part here now, if you want to leave this place straight like this, so at the tie line you measure your tie measurement. My tie measurement is 11.5 plus 1 inch for seam allowance. That will be 12.5. Okay, plus 1 inch, 12.5. Then I'm adding half an inch for ease, making 13. So this is the 13 inches here. So now the next thing you want to do, I'm going to connect this line. So this 13 inches you have at your tie line, here, you are going to take it downward. Okay, so your tie measurement here is what is going to determine what you measure downward around this area. So it's 13 inches that I have. So I'll measure the 13 inches downward like so. Can you see what I'm doing? So I'll measure the 13 inches downward. I'll measure it downward. So once you are done measuring downward, if you want to leave it as a wide leg like this, you can leave it as wide as it is here now. And if you feel you don't want it wide, you can always, you know, alter it, but I'll just use my hip measurements here. So to determine that, you need to know the center line of this place. So my crotch, so the center I have here is going to be around, so I have 13 inches here. So this 13 inches, you are going to divide, you are going to check for the midpoint of the 13 inches by doing so. So the midpoint of 13 inches is 6.5, okay? So you're going to take the 6.5 like so. 6.5 downward. You can now measure what you have at your hip area here, which is 11 inches. So the 11, I'll be putting the 11 inches here. So the 11 inches, half of 11 inches is 5.5. So you take 5.5 on this side. Can you see? 5.5 on this side and 5.5 on the other side. That is if you don't want the length, the trouser, if you don't want a too big leg for the trouser, if you don't want the trouser to be too big. But if you want it to be big, you can just leave the thigh measurement as it is. You can just leave it at your thigh measurement. But if you want to reduce it, you can just use your hip or minus more. So now I'm going to connect all the lines that I've just drawn. Now I'll connect it together. Okay, then from your tie line here, you also connect it. Then from your tie line here, no, this is your tie measurement, then you connect to this place. Okay, so at times, so also to determine where to take your measurement from, you can just insert your your knee measurement. So from that knee measurement is where you take the slant line like so, but I didn't input my knee measurement. Okay, so now I'm done with this part. So at this, because this is a center line, you may want to add half an inch seam allowance to it, to this place. Okay, you add half an inch seam allowance to this line here. Didn't add any seam allowance to this place, so I'm going to be adding the seam allowance I'm supposed to add around here. I will add it to the back. So all you just need to do is the same thing. The back measurement is the same thing around here. Once I'm cutting this place the same way, unless you want to add zipper allowance to yours. But because I'll be putting elastic around here, so I don't need any zipper allowance around here. So now the next thing to do now is, the allowances I'm going to be needing here for both front and back is 1 inch. So that means 1 inch in two places. That will be 2 inches seam allowance. So in this jumpsuit we have seam at the waistline. I'm supposed to add 1 inch extension to the back because of the butt, so that your butt won't be pulling the fabric downward. So what I will do is the 2 inches for seam allowance. Now I will add 1 inch to it to make it 3 inches. So this is the 3 inches I have here. I have all the 3 inches here, but so now I'm taking my knee measurement of 35 inches. You can see I'm taking the 5 inches upward, so I'm taking 35 inches. So from that 35 inches, the reason why I'm marking it out is because you won't be needing all the 3 inches you have at the crotch line. You won't be needing it at the knee line, so you have to measure just your 2 inches at the knee line. Okay, at the crotch. So this 2 inches seam allowance, you take it downward. Okay, you take it by taking this measurement from your measurement here, from this measurement, that's where you take the 2 inches. So from this measurement here, you take your 2 inches seam allowance, okay, from this measurement. So guys, when you're cutting, you just need to be careful. You can see the way I'm cutting it. You have to cut the back first. You can see I was cutting the back first, and then you cut the other side. You cut it together like what I'm doing. And so this other side, you need to raise the front up before cutting, so you don't make mistake of cutting the front and back together. So at the center back is half an inch more than the center front. So when I'm joining, I'll be joining by 1 inch at the center back, and I'll be joining by half an inch at the center front. I did this so that I would be able to identify which bodies is for the front and which one is for the back. You can see how it looks, that the center back is more than the center front at the upper bodies. So I'm cutting a normal off-shoulder sleeve. I have a tutorial on how to cut an off-shoulder sleeve. Just take your 5 inches, the same 5 inches we took upward on the fabric, you take it upward, and then you measure your armhole, which is the point I have around there, and then you measure what you would like around the sleeve. Or better still, to create the armhole, you can just place your bodies on the armhole area there to curve that side, just like what I just did now. Can you see the curve on the bodies? You can place it on it and then use it to curve it out. So once you are done, just cut the sleeves. I have the 2 sleeves together, so then you fold in half an inch twice for elastic casing, and also on the bodies you mark your waistline where you are going to be passing the elastic. Can you see the line there? And then you stitch at the back, and then you have to stitch your sleeve to the, so you have to attach the sleeve to the bodies before you stitch the elastic casing. So once you are done stitching the sleeve on the bodies, then you can now fold in the allowance for the elastic casing. So this is the outcome of the jumpsuit. I hope you find this video helpful, and please don't forget to like and share this video. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, please subscribe. See you guys in my next